Harbour Brewing Company, Wavehunter, Helles.
And remember, life is too short to be drinking shitty beer.
Welcome to another edition of Bands, Bikes and Booze Reviews. The hunt for a decent English Helles or lager goes on, and I've come up with this one. Now this was in Morrison's, and it's not a regular in Morrison's. I don't know how it's ended up there. There was a box of them, and I thought, you know what, I'll give it a go. This lot do a couple of lagers, and also do a Pilsner as well. A little bit of a gripe though, Harbour, if you're watching, give a better description of your beers. There's nothing on most of them, and that's really annoying. There was nothing on this, and I really had to search to find out what this was all about. I've learned that it's got Sarts hops in, and I've also learned that you do a Pilsner. I'm talking as if they're watching. They're probably not fucking watching, but they do a Pilsner, and I would have thought the Sarts hops would have gone into the Pilsner. However, I don't know whether it has or not, because they hadn't said it. Pull your finger out, Harbour. Anyway, relax. This is it's a lager. They've called it Helles, and that's a fucking gripe of mine, that is, when English brewers call their beers by their German names. Just call them a lager. I've mentioned this before on the channel about what was the name? Calvor's Brewery, and I had this out with them. They was on what's the little Welsh fella? Real Ale Craft Beer. He had a little live stream going on, and he said that the Calvors were going to be on there. And well, yeah, I pulled him up and said, "Why are you calling it Helles? Why don't you just call it a lager?" And yeah, they come up with some explanation for it. I wouldn't have a problem if it said Helles style, so you know I would understand what they would be going for. But the fact they put Sarts hops in this makes me question whether it's a Helles, because any decent Helles in Germany doesn't have Sarts hops. Yes, Sarts hops are a noble hop. However, if you're going to be trying out a Bavarian Helles, then you're more than likely going to be trying some kind of a Hallertauer tradition, or maybe a Mittelfrüh, or sometimes even a Hercules in the Hercules hop in the beer. Sarts, you wouldn't normally get that. That's sort of reserved for Pilsners, and the Czechs use almost exclusively Sarts and variations of the Sarts hops. So why they've called it Helles and put Sarts in there, I don't know. But we shall wait and see. Now, there's not a lot really about the brewery. They go a lot about their ethics and all that. They're based in Cornwall. They're based in a place called Bodmin. I'm sure if you're from the UK, you've heard of Bodmin. It's basically the administrative city in Cornwall. That I think the only train station in Cornwall is in Bodmin, the mainline train station. So if you're going to Cornwall by train, then you're gonna end up in Bodmin. And yeah, that's North Cornwall. So if you're going south, then you've got to have a car. I don't know why the government don't do better transport links to Cornwall. It's a really good tourist attraction, but you have to have a car to go there, and that's annoying for people who don't drive. But I digress. Yeah, a little bit about why I'm on a quest for a decent English lager. Basically, there's very, very few. I've only tasted two that have impressed me somewhat. The Sam Smith's one, the organic lager, that was really nice, and the C84 lager, I did like that. That was a nice lager. Everything else I've tried has been either a poor imitation or just bland and nondescript, and that's a real shame. Now, this country doesn't really have a tradition of lager. We've been, since the 1970s, we've been served up in this country a tradition of crap macro brewed lager, and basically, and I'm guilty of it as well. I'm not pointing fingers. I'll hold my hands up. I've been guilty of it as well. When I was young, I would down these lagers and I wouldn't give them a second thought. And it's a real shame, because there is good lager out there. However, you walk into any supermarket and even your local Skunk Central, you're just bombarded by macro brewers. Now, that's, of course, not the shopkeepers, or even, well, I wouldn't have a go at the supermarkets. They're partly to blame, but the local Skunk Centrals, I can't really complain about that, because they basically they go to a cash and carry and they buy everything in bulk, so they're at the behest of the cash and carry. And sometimes if it's a tied supermarket, they have to stock certain beers and they can't really digress. Luckily, there's two round the corner that I get on really well with, and one of them does Fuller's Bengal Lancer, which is a real boon for me, because that's one of my fridge fillers. They also do London Pride. I'm sort of going off London Pride now. It doesn't taste the same. I'll buy a bottle occasionally, but my love affair with London Pride in bottles has waned somewhat due to the recipe definitely changing. I'm sure it has. But I did try the other day on Twitter to try and see if they would admit that it's changed, but for the third time they've not answered my tweet. The effing bar stewards. I can't really moan too much. The other beers that they do are still good, so yeah, as long as they don't fuck with 1845 and ESB, I'll be happy. Anyway, I'm rambling and I'm not talking about this beer, so let's get on to this beer. Righto, this is a Helles beer, according to them. Not a lager, it's a Helles with Sarts hops. It is 4.3%. It's a really, again, if you're going to be brewing a Helles, you want to be doing it at 5%, because Helles that's traditionally what Helles are. You rarely, well, you will on the occasion see a 4.7 or a 4.9, 4.3. You're pushing it. I can probably see why they've done it. It's because because they may think people want to session it, and B, the tax or the duty that's on beer due to the strength, maybe it's something to do with that. This goes out, well, again, look at this. Now I know why this has turned up in Morrison's. This is out of date. This is on the 30th of the 11th. I'm lying. Stop all proceedings. It's 30th of the 11th, 2023. Mr. Magoo strikes again. He can't see what he's fucking reading. You dickhead. Anyway, it's a 660ml bottle. Now, you know my aversion to 660ml bottles, but it's usually because when macro brewers brew beer under license, such as Star of Pramen, a couple of others, I think they do a Pilsner or a Kel. No, they don't. I'm lying. What am I talking about? There's a couple of others that are in 660ml bottles, and they're basically fucking shit. So that's my aversion to 60ml bottles. But of course, this lot, they aren't a macro brewer, they are a craft brewer. Wavehunter Helles, aroma, herbal, lemon, fresh grain. Well, that's what you'd expect from a Helles, so yeah. Flavour, light and crisp. Flavour, what does light tell you? Light mouthfeel? What? Crisp? Lager's not crisp. White wine is crisp. Gers is crisp. Lager is not crisp. Finish, brisk and dry. Brisk, that means the finish doesn't last long. Okay. Dry, if it's a dry finish, then you're sort of describing a Pilsner. Dry and bitter, are they the same? No, they're not. So this, I don't know, it's all a little bit confusing for me. Now, I will say this brewery, I was looking on their website, and they do a rhubarb ice cream pale ale. Jesus. Anyway, let's stop gassing and let's get this open and see what's going on. Right, this is chilled. It has come out of the fridge. In fact, I'd go one further and say it's quite cold. It's quite cold out there, and it's a little bit cold in here. I didn't use my posh cap lifter. I just used the normal one today. There's the cap. I'm sure you've seen this lot before, and I think I've reviewed a couple of Harbour Brewing Company beers on the channel. Again, they don't stand out. I think one of them was a lager, actually. Could be wrong. You know what the old grey matter's like when you get to mine. Wow. Apart from the glass being dirty, that is really, really light. And when I say light, I mean light in colour. Right, ignore the bubbles on the side of the glass, but that is really light. Okay. There's a slight haze to it as well. Head is foamy and white on the nose. Ooh. There's definitely some of that Sart's hop character in there. Definitely getting it. There's an earthiness to it as well. I'm sure this is, again, it's the water. Now the water's quite soft down in Cornwall. However, it's not the kind of spring water you get in Bavaria. It's not as pure. And someone was saying on the comments today, really interesting point about the Shepherd Neame beer all having a what some people perceive to be a metallic taste, and they say it's because of the chalky and high alkali content in the water. The water in Kent is very chalky and it's very hard. It does contain a lot of minerals that probably season the beer, which is probably why their lagers aren't too great. But there's quite an earthy aroma coming from this, and it's not floral. It's like leafy, if you can imagine that, leafy hops, and it's quite pronounced. So this has got the sort of a hallmark of a pilsner. But let's try it. The proof is in the tasting, so let's get it down my fat Gregory Peck. Bottoms up. Quite malty, I will say that. But there's that earthy type note on there, but that leafy hop. I'm trying to give you a better description. I suppose it's herbal. I suppose you would class it as being herbal. To me, this tastes like a typical English craft brewed lager, whereas the malt in there, it just doesn't compare to the German stuff. I mean, there it is in the glass. There is a haze to it. I'm not complaining about that. This is quite cold, so I'm imagining, I'm probably disguising some of the flavours that are in here, but it's just okay. It doesn't really bowl me over, to be honest. It's not bad, I will say that. There's quite a malty finish on it, and that malt is, I would say, more like biscuit malt. It's bordering on biscuit malt, to be honest. It's not that bready type malt that you get from a good German Helles. This is slightly more biscuity, if you know what I mean. There is, as I say, and I get this quite a lot whenever I go to craft pubs, and I normally drink, if I've got a Keller beer, I'll drink that. If I've got a lager, I'll drink that. I always try that out. Who is it? Is it Lost and Founded, I think it's called? Can't remember. I'm fucking useless. They used to do a Keller beer, which wasn't bad, and sadly gone now. I don't know whether, I think I have mentioned it actually in one of the videos, one of the craft brew pubs that me and a mate used to drink in, because he really is into his craft beer. Me and him used to go down there, and he told me a while back that they've actually closed down there, which is a real shame. But yeah, unfortunate for not just them, but there's loads of breweries closing down there, and it's a fucking disgrace on this government. But I'm not going to get into politics. No. let's stop that right now. There's a slight trace of lemon. I am getting that now. The herbal notes are more like leafy. If you can imagine what kind of leaf, maybe not a coriander leaf. I don't know. I'm trying to describe what a leaf tastes like. A green leaf. I suppose it's a hop leaf, really, isn't it? And that's sort of coming through in here, but I don't know. The choice of using Sarts, I would question that if you're going to put it in a Helles. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad. It's not a chuck down a sink job. I'm going to drink that, and yeah, I will enjoy it. It's not bad, but it just doesn't compare to what you get abroad. It really doesn't, which is a shame. I think if they're going to call this a Helles, you need to have a little bit more honey sweetness in there, which comes from the yeast. So my advice to Harbour is to get yourself over to Germany and try and steal some yeast off a decent brewer. That's the key to the water and the yeast. I think, well, everything, it's the sum of all its parts, isn't it, really? Good German beer. And I just don't think we, when it comes to lager, I just don't think we do it. We just, I don't know, I don't know whether it's the climate, I don't know whether it's the geology of the United Kingdom, but maybe it's the lack of know-how. Maybe there's no big brewer out there. I would have liked to have tried that Fuller's lager that they do, which contains noble hops, but it's seasonal and currently it's not available at the moment, which is a shame, but it sounds a lot better than that Frontier crap. Why not stop brewing Frontier, make that seasonal, and just fucking brew that German beer and give us a go on it. This stuff, just okay. Just unremarkable. Not offensive, it's just unremarkable. I'll have this and I'll probably forget about it in a couple of weeks. It's just one of them beers. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're in Cornwall and you see this on tap, I imagine it's quite nice. But it's one of them beers at 4.3% as well. This is sessionable. So it's got a couple of things going for it, but it just doesn't excite me. Put it that way. So what is the verdict on Harbour Brewing Company Helles? Their Wavehunter Helles, I should say. I'm fucking all over the place today. It's just okay. It's nothing special. It's not offensive, put it that way. I'm not going to say that, you know, this is a terrible beer, don't buy it. If you drink it as cold as I've got it now, it is actually quite refreshing. I'm not saying it's a bad beer. I think the description is a little bit off. They're saying that they make a big thing about it being crisp and dry, having a dry finish. It's nothing of the sort. There's a biscuit malt finish on there, but there is leafy sort of hop type overtones to this, which again are not unpleasant, but it's just not the sort of thing you would see in a German Helles, unfortunately. But I mean, it doesn't look bad. There's got I don't know if you can see that or not, but it has got a haze to it. Let me get it a little bit closer. It is very, very light in colour. Very, very light indeed. And yeah, just wet, cold, tastes of lager. Don't get me wrong, this is better than a macro brew lager. So if you're in a supermarket or if you're in Morrison's and you see this and you're thinking of buying something like Stella or Foster's, go for this all day long. It's nicer. You get 660ml, it's 4.3%, which is roughly the same as most macro brew beers, apart from Stella, obviously. Well, I don't know, what is the ABV on Stella now? It's 4, They've dropped it again, haven't they? It's 4%, 4.6% or 4.7. I don't know, I can't remember. Foster's and all that. So, you know, just fucking do yourself a favour. But if you're buying Foster's, then my brother-in-law's like this as well. I brought over some beer and Moretti's. I was trying to get rid of them. Somebody bought me them. I can't remember who bought me them, but it was for Christmas, and I went round to see my sister, and I brought these Moretti's round. He wouldn't have one. He said, "No, I'll drink me Foster's." I was like, "Fucking hell!" But yeah, couldn't get rid of them. Anyway, I haven't reviewed beer and Moretti actually on this channel. I should do it, and they've got it in cans around the corner. So watch this space if you want to see a Moretti. There's little point in me reviewing them. It might be funny. I might go into a rant about beer being brewed under license, but yeah. As for this stuff, not bad, not unpleasant. Probably won't be buying it again. If there's nothing else, or if it's a choice between this and a macro brew, then it's going to be this all day long. Not unpleasant, but if you're in a supermarket buying that, then you've got, I mean, I was in Morrison's the other day and they had Hofbrau and that. There's no competition there really, is there? You've got a true Helles, and then you've got that. Oh well, not knocking you, Harbour. I'm sure your rhubarb ice cream pale ale is absolutely gorgeous to those people who like it, but unfortunately I won't be buying that, and I probably won't be buying this unless the circumstances that I'm in dictate that I should buy it. But there you go. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It sounds harsh, but you know, you're making bold claims there. If you call it a Helles, I know what a good Helles tastes like. That isn't a good Helles. I'm not saying it's not a good Helles. It's a very, very average attempt at Helles. But there you go. I'm comparing the best with what you're saying. You know, if you're going to call it a Helles, that's what I'm going to compare it to. If you called it a Cornish lager, maybe things would have been different. I do go big on the description on a beer, and I think maybe putting Sart's hops in there, maybe that was a mistake. Maybe you should, instead of looking to buy American fucking hops, look fucking east to Bavaria, Hallertau. Instead of going, I see all these fucking craft brewers going off to Washington to buy American. You've got it more or less on your doorstep in the EU, in Germany. You can just, you know, hop over on in a van, drive to Bavaria, get some fucking quality hops from people who know how to grow hops. I'm not saying the Americans don't know how to grow hops. That wasn't the implication. I'm just saying, if you want to get hops from the experts, Hallertau in Bavaria is the place you should be going. Anyway, I'm rambling. This has been a proper ramble. I haven't really concentrated on the lager that much, but what does that tell you about the lager? And remember, beer is working class champagne.